How does the dyslexic child best gain meaning from reading? A child does not simply open a book, decode the words, and magically understand the content. The extent and depth of his vocabulary and background knowledge play a major role in determining how well equipped he is to gain meaning from the text. Important, too, are the active thinking processes the reader uses to integrate his existing knowledge with the new information he encounters. In a general sense, these thinking processes can be regarded as reasoning. Based on this model, approaches to teaching comprehension focus on strengthening and extending the child's word and worldly knowledge and providing him with a series of strategies to organize and direct his thinking as he reads. How does a dyslexic child best grow vocabulary? The size of a child's vocabulary is one of the best predictors of his reading comprehension. Children with the largest vocabularies tend to be the strongest readers. A growing body of evidence suggests that increases in the quality and quantity of exposure to language and vocabulary in early childhood and verbal interaction with parents and caregivers are associated with improved language and vocabulary later in childhood. A significant factor in a child's vocabulary in the early school years relates to the sophistication of the parent's vocabulary during conversations with him and the degree to which the parents speak directly to him. In fact, parent-child interactions at a young age are far more important for language development than, for example, incidental exposure to language through television. Furthermore, the quality of teacher-child verbal interaction for preschoolers is positively related to children's vocabulary and comprehension gains in the early school years. Language measures, including receptive vocabulary in the early years, were predictive of reading comprehension in elementary and middle school for both children at risk of dyslexia and typically developing children. Strategies focusing on the early introduction of reading books to young children offer a potential avenue to improving language, particularly vocabulary. It has long been known that books stimulate vocabulary because they contain a wider vocabulary than occurs in ordinary conversations, and even simple stories for toddlers include more complex words and phrases than the content of typical parent-child conversation. In a recent report, we used data from the Connecticut Longitudinal Study to examine growth in reading comprehension and verbal ability from grades 1 through 9. We found that in the early grades, vocabulary was not strongly related to reading comprehension. However, for grade 5 and beyond, vocabulary had a much stronger influence. So you ask, what is the optimal approach to teaching vocabulary to dyslexic children, and why is it important? For dyslexic children, it is especially critical to build a large reservoir of vocabulary words so that even if the child's ability to decode words is weak, her extensive vocabulary will enable her to figure out the word. Isabel Beck and her colleagues in the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh provide a framework for systematically building vocabulary. They speak of 3 tiers of vocabulary. Tier 1 consists of common words found in oral language. Tier 2 consists of words found in written language which are of high utility. Tier 3 consists of words that are limited to specialized domains such as law, medicine, and archaeology. Since Tier 1 words are already known, and Tier 3 words are so specialized, it is Tier 2 words that have the greatest utility and that logically form the focus of effective vocabulary instruction. It is important to keep in mind that the major focus in teaching vocabulary should be on the idea that the word represents, even to the point of beginning any discussion with the idea rather than the definition of a word. At the beginning of school, most of the words a child encounters in print will be in his spoken vocabulary, Tier 1 words. Then, sometime around 3rd grade, the words he comes across in print are less likely to be familiar to him, Tier 2 words. This marks a pivotal point in the child's growth as a skilled reader. He must therefore build up his vocabulary so he can recognize these less familiar words when he reads them. Beck and her colleagues provide examples of Tier 2 words, including comment, occurrence, tended, mention, emerging, admit, just to name a few.